Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is another morning update. All right, folks, we're going to dispense with the monologue for this one, and we're just going to jump right into the article. We have an article today from the Miami Herald. The headline is, "Even as Ghislaine Maxwell documents are unsealed, many of her secrets remain buried." This article was authored by Ben Weider, Kevin G. Hall, and Julie K. Brown. Now, that's for sure. There's a lot of redactions here, right? We know that her private life was not going to be made public, meaning any sort of sexual trysts that was between consensual adults, I guess, was going to remain redacted. So, while we have a little bit of a look inside behind the curtain, there are still things that remain out of the realm of public consumption. Let's jump into this article and see what is going on. After months of legal battles, a trove of new documents was released Wednesday overnight under a federal judge's order, including much anticipated deposition from July 2016 that shows a combative and evasive Ghislaine Maxwell. The 59-year-old accused longtime associate, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, and general all-around scuzzbag, Ghislaine Maxwell, dodging detailed questions about his accusers. So, in that deposition, like we talked about in previous segments, she was very evasive, right? She was combative, and she answered these questions while Jeffrey Epstein was pleading the fifth. I almost wonder if Epstein was attempting to make it so she took all of the blame if this thing ever blew up, which is definitely quite possible considering we're dealing with a scumbag like Jeffrey Epstein. In Maxwell's heavily redacted deposition, she repeatedly insisted she had little knowledge of any Epstein sexual partners or proclivities, although acknowledging she recognized many of his accusers as friends of Epstein. She is asked about her own sexual relationship with Epstein, but her responses are redacted. Now, again, look, I have no doubt that they might have been sexually active, right? Okay, cool. I do not believe that these people were in love. I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein is capable of that, and I don't believe Maxwell is capable of that either. Their whole entire relationship was a cover, in my opinion. The whole relationship was put into play for them to get this operation up and running. They knew that they could manipulate several different quarters of life if they infiltrated so-called polite society and used people in that realm as a vehicle. And they dangled that carrot, right? How many times have we seen all of these people in so-called polite society say, well, Epstein was offering this, that, or the other thing. So they always dangled that carrot, right, to give these people a little reason for letting them into their circle. And Epstein and Maxwell exploited that shit to a T. The contents of Maxwell's depositions are significant because she faces criminal perjury charges related to her responses in those sworn statements. Maxwell has mounted an aggressive legal battle to keep her testimony sealed, and her lawyers have been successful in persuading the judge to redact many of the salacious details about her sex life from the July 2016 deposition. Look, it's a slippery slope, right? We want it all to be unredacted, and we want it all to be put on blast. But again, when it comes to what consenting adults are doing, I find it hard for anyone to really dig deep there, right? I mean, I get it. It's, when this information comes out, it does add a lot more context when things are unredacted. But I also see where Preska was going here. The judge, Loretta Preska, also redacted the names of powerful men such as Prince Andrew and former President Bill Clinton from the documents. Both men were known friends with Epstein, but have repeatedly denied they were involved or even knew about Epstein's sex trafficking. Now, I don't like that, really, to tell you the truth. The redacted names of powerful people. If they're someone who is in the public sphere, someone who's in the public eye, then their name should not be redacted from this. I think that it should be the full Monty, right? Let's see all of the people involved. Let's get it all in the record. It's all in the record, obviously, but let's get it in the public record, and let's see all of these names. Anything short of specific details of what was going on between Maxwell and a consensual partner, I want all of that out. I think all of that deserves to be in the public sphere, and I think it should not be redacted. Maxwell is currently in federal custody in Brooklyn, awaiting trial on 4 charges of sexual trafficking and 2 counts of perjury. The 73-page transcript of the deposition Maxwell gave under court order in July 2016 reflected testimony she was forced to give after a judge determined her to have been evasive in an April 2016 deposition when asked the same questions about her sex life and that of Epstein. Included in the dozens of documents released late Wednesday were transcripts of testimony given by Epstein's former house manager, Juan Alessi, and by Ronaldo Rizzo, an employee of longtime Epstein friend and financial mogul Glenn Dubin. Now, again, I just was talking about the Dubins in the last segment, and it's not even a question, in my opinion, that Glenn Dubin is up to this in his neck. Not only is there the allegation from Virginia, there is also the 15-year-old girl that was in the Dubin's kitchen. What happened to her? Did they abuse her as well? These are all questions that still have not been answered. So I think that Glenn Dubin should be right up at the top of the list as people who should have to come in and speak under oath on the record about what they know or what they were involved in. Both men had provided shocking testimony in the 2015 civil defamation case that pitted Maxwell against Virginia Roberts, who alleged she was sexually trafficked by both Maxwell and Epstein. The new documents back up their accounts to the media. In the case of Rizzo and his former employer Dubin, the latter was issued a subpoena last year by Denise George, the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, who is bringing a civil racketeering case against the Epstein estate. Now, that's what we call receipts, folks. And for those of you who like to make baseless allegations and talk about fake pictures and shit like that, unless you show up with some receipts and some evidence, I don't even have the time to bother with you. So keep up the nonsense. Good for you. You're the one looking like a moron. But unless you have some receipts to back up the nonsense, well, words are just wind. One of the few people named in the document, aside from Maxwell, Epstein, and Roberts, is famed defense lawyer Alan "I kept my underpants on" Dershowitz, who has publicly maintained that he is happy for his name to be unsealed in the documents. Maxwell is asked about a visit by Dershowitz and his wife and daughter to Epstein's private island in the Virgin Islands. The only conversation she can recall about was about metal detecting, as Maxwell used a metal detector on the beach. Oh yeah, I'm sure that was the only conversation. I'm sure Mr. I kept my underpants on, Crypt Keeper Dershowitz, was strolling along the beach in his banana hammock, having a conversation with Ghislaine Maxwell as she's out there using a metal detector, because that certainly seems in line for what these people are up to. Give me a break, a metal detector? Stop it. Maxwell was also asked about her interactions in Columbus, Ohio, with a woman who appears to be Maria Farmer. Farmer has said publicly that Epstein and Maxwell fondled her in Ohio, and her younger sister Annie is one of 3 victims in a criminal trial who have accused Maxwell of facilitating Epstein's sexual abuse of them as girls. Maxwell recalls only that she said hello to Maria Farmer. Yeah, I'm sure that's all that occurred. I'm sure that all you ever said to Maria was hello, and that Maria just made this story up out of thin air. That's exactly why she went to the FBI and the police and filed a report, right? Because she's just making it up out of thin air. And that's what people do when they're telling stories. They go to the police. Maxwell is such an absolute BS artist. It is not even debatable at this point, in my opinion. She is such a nonsensical witch. Nothing she says is based in truth. Everything she says is just bogus. And it seems like the whole entire defense that these people were attempting to use is blowing up directly in their face. Maxwell is asked why she stopped working with Epstein and says that her relationship with him had soured. I ceased to be happy in the job, and I ceased to be happy spending time with Mr. Epstein, she said. He became more difficult to work with. So you mean to tell me that trust fund baby, Oxford gal, Ghislaine Maxwell was just some simple assistant to Jeffrey Epstein? That's what she would have us believe. That's what she would have you believe. Meanwhile, we all know it's different. We all know that she was the co-boss, the underboss, boss 1A and 1B. We all know that she was setting all of this stuff in motion, and she was the one working with the Core Four to make sure this all happened. And the only reason that her and Epstein had some sort of, I'm doing air quotes, falling out was to give themselves a bit of cover in case they ever got arrested. There was never any falling out with these two, in my opinion. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. They might not have been seen in public anymore, but if you think they weren't contacting each other and corresponding behind the scenes, well, I don't know about that. Maxwell claims in the July 2016 deposition that her last contact with Epstein came a very long time ago. An earlier release of documents from the lawsuit revealed that Maxwell and Epstein had been in touch over email in early 2015, with Epstein writing to Maxwell, "You have done nothing wrong, and I would urge you to start acting like it." Yeah, well, I got a very long time, huh? Early 2016. Doesn't seem like a very long time to me. In fact, I believe, and obviously this is just my opinion, that they were in contact the whole time. There was never no bump in contact or gap where they stopped talking. Of course, publicly, because it suited them both not to be seen in public, right? If you're facing a conspiracy charge, well, would you want to be hanging out with your co-conspirator? Of course not. So behind the scenes, well, things were obviously different. Other former Epstein employees also described a challenging work environment. Alessi, for example, recalls that Epstein refused to talk to him directly when they were both in Epstein's Palm Beach mansion and would instead relay messages for Alessi to employees in New York, who then informed Alessi of Epstein's request. Yeah, he thinks he's a mafioso, right? A don, or a member of a cartel or something. I'm not talking to you. My associates will talk to you. My people will talk to you. And it's another way for him to put some bounce between him and his associates, right? Put enough layers and, well, you're protecting yourself. Epstein was smart when it came to laying down the criminal enterprise, layering it, so that he had many layers between himself and the actual ground level activity. And that is why RICO is so important here. Without RICO, you can go after each person, but you can't go after them as an entity. It's obvious that what Epstein was up to, what he was doing, and the people working with him were all part of a criminal enterprise. U.S. District Judge Loretta A. Preska last summer began ordering the release of documents in the Roberts-Maxwell lawsuit after a July ruling in favor of the Miami Herald and its records request lawsuit. Those documents had drawn attention to Maxwell's alleged role in procuring and grooming Epstein's alleged survivors. Epstein had previously been charged more than a decade earlier with sexually abusing girls in Florida, but had gotten a remarkably lenient deal. acknowledged late last year by the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility, which allowed him to plead guilty to a lesser procuring charge and serve a short sentence in a county jail. Boy, isn't that nice. Every time I read that, I get fired up all over again. I get hot under the collar, burned up, ears on fire, rage that's hotter than 1,000 burning suns. How these people could have given him this deal is absolutely beyond me. It is such a gross miscarriage of justice, and the fact that this deal has not been slapped down yet is an absolute travesty. The 11th Circuit, the ball is in your court. Please do the right thing here. That deal was the subject of the Miami Herald's 2018 Perversion of Justice series, which led more accusers to come forward, leading to new sex charges brought against him in July 2019. When he died awaiting trial in what authorities say was suicide by hanging. I like how they worded that. He died awaiting trial in what authorities say was suicide by hanging. Leaving it up to you to make the decision, right? What authorities say. They might not believe that. Since then, nearly 200 survivors have filed claims against the late financier's estate, pedophile. And every single one of those people that the claims prove to be true should be getting paid, should be getting dumped out a few fazools, should be getting taken care of. Because, folks, what happened here is just unacceptable. And for the years that it was allowed to occur, all of these years it was allowed to occur, that should just compound the interest, in my opinion. Just like if you don't pay your bill, it's delinquent, right? You owe somebody, well, now you got some interest to pay. You better pay your VIG. And every single one of these accusers whose claims are proven to be truthful, they should all get Brinks trucks backing up on their front lawn and dumping money out onto it. Maxwell was arrested and charged in the Southern District of New York in July with 4 counts of sexual trafficking and 2 counts of perjury for her alleged role in facilitating and in some cases participating in Epstein's sexual abuse of girls. Late last year, a deposition she gave in April 2016 was made public and showed her evasive and combative when asked questions that were sexual in nature. The judge who oversaw the civil suit at the time ordered her to sit for another deposition in July 2016. Maxwell's lawyer sought to keep large sections of it redacted from the current release, saying that she had a right to privacy like any other citizen when it came to matters of consensual adult sexual behavior. And again, I'm torn there, right? Because I'm not one that likes to get precedent smashed on, because the government, if you give them any power, well, they'll use the precedent used in this case to screw you later on down the road. But I think that there has to be some sort of allowance made here. And I would really love to see Preska go completely unredacted. I don't think it's going to happen, but boy, would I love it. But at issue in the original civil lawsuit and in an ongoing federal criminal prosecution of her is the role she played in procuring underage girls for Epstein, who was arrested in July 2019 and died in what was ruled a jail cell suicide the following month. Many of the questions in the April 2016 deposition went to her knowledge of Epstein's behavior and whether she participated in it. So Ghislaine was getting, hammered, peppered with questions about Epstein's behavior, what he was doing with these girls, if Maxwell participated, what she saw, what she knew. And of course, Maxwell was evasive. Of course, she was confrontational. And unlike Epstein, she wasn't pleading the fifth. So that's how you see and why you see her in such jeopardy here. Lawyers for Roberts were trying to make the case back then, and now in the fight over unsealing the documents, that Maxwell and Epstein led aberrant sexual lives and that she wasn't truthful about that in her testimony. Roberts alleges that Maxwell and Epstein both abused her and forced her to have sex with prominent men, such as Great Britain's Joe Exotic of the Windsor family and celebrity lawyer Alan I Kept My Underpants on Dershowitz. Both men deny the allegation, and Dershowitz and Roberts have dueling, ongoing defamation suits. The Crypt Keeper sure does love his lawsuits, huh? I wonder how his lawsuit against CNN is going. This dude has more lawsuits than he has common sense at this point. The two 2016 depositions being fought over now have taken on an even greater significance because Maxwell's statements in them are crucial to the two federal counts of perjury Maxwell faces. In a letter filed Monday, Maxwell's lawyers argue that the section of her July 2016 deposition that formed the basis of one of the two perjury charges should remain sealed because they plan to challenge how the government obtained the material which was under a protective order in the first place. Releasing the material, unredacted, Maxwell's lawyers argued, renders harmless any unconstitutional conduct by the government in obtaining the deposition transcript and indicting Miss Maxwell for perjury. This has all been went over already. The government got the documents from a court. You see, the thing is, they try and retread the ground here. They try and rehoe the ground. What they don't know is they've already salted the earth. And that soil isn't going to grow anything. Lawyers for the Miami Herald and Roberts both filed motions Wednesday opposing Maxwell's attempt to keep more of the deposition secret, each arguing there was no new compelling evidence to warrant it. And I agree. I want it all unredacted, all of it. Whatever is in here, I think should be unredacted, man. I mean, the consensual stuff with Maxwell's questionable, but at this point, the more I think about it, the more I think that the whole thing should just be dumped and should be available for the public to read. I mean, enough is enough. While Miss Maxwell begins her letter by expressing privacy concerns over the soon-to-be-released portion of her transcript, it is clear her real concern, expressed on the second page, is concealing potential evidence of perjury, wrote Christine N. Walls, an attorney at Holland & Knight LLP representing the Herald. This is not a recognized countervailing interest to overcome the presumption of public access. And she's right. She makes a good argument here, right? Christine N. Walls is making a good argument. And you folks know me. I go where the evidence leads me, wherever that may be. And, after reading this article and reading a little bit more, I think that all of it should be unredacted. I'm gonna go back and say that all of it should be redacted. Screw it. Even her personal life. Sigrid S. Macaulay, arguing for Roberts, wrote that Maxwell fails to satisfy the standard for reconsideration in that it is not based on new or overlooked information, and the questions Maxwell is objecting to are not about consenting sexual behavior. And there you go. There's the rub, right? Like I just said. They're just repackaging old arguments and putting a new bow and new wrapping paper on it. We all know the deal, and we all know this stuff is bogus. Maxwell's looking for any technicality that she can find, folks. Trust me on that. Meanwhile, before a different federal judge, Maxwell's lawyers filed 12 motions Monday night objecting to Maxwell's criminal charges. While many of the motions are currently under seal because they contain sensitive information, the motions released tackle a variety of issues. In one, they argue that Maxwell's indictment should be thrown out because the grand jury that delivered it in White Plains, New York, is less black and Hispanic than the composition of the jury pool for the Manhattan court, where she will be tried, which was closed at the time due to COVID-19. BS. She wants to go to Manhattan so she could have some of her rich buddies be on the court, so that some of her rich buddies can be involved. Meanwhile, in Westchester, well, I've already explained this. There is a very varied amount of people in Westchester, all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of races. So this shit is garbage. I can tell you that with fact. I grew up in South Yonkers. I know what it's like there, all right? So she's a liar, okay? Point blank, period. In another, they argue that the sex trafficking charges should be dropped for a lack of specificity in terms of the conduct alleged because the indictment doesn't name the 3 alleged victims or include specific dates for the alleged crimes, instead referring to activities that occurred between 1994 and 1997. Not because she's innocent again, right? Just because the wording might not be right, or there's a technicality here that we can manipulate, or a loophole for us to jump through. Here's an idea. Prove that your client is innocent. How about you try and do that? And in another, they argue that Maxwell's perjury counts should be tried separately from the sexual trafficking counts. The perjury charges, which cover statements made in 2016, are particularly important because they bring the conduct Maxwell is charged with closer to the present day than the sexual trafficking crimes, which are alleged to have occurred more than 2 decades earlier, said David Weinstein, a former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of Florida. And that is all true. But my contention is this. There are plenty more crimes recently. Let's get some of those girls to talk. Let's find some of those girls who were abused by Maxwell and Epstein after the statute of limitations. I'm telling you, they're out there. We know that they're out there. The prosecution needs to do the dirty work, their due diligence. They need to make sure that they have all of these girls lined up to testify. Saying that this was a continuing cover-up that she was willing to lie about in a deposition gives them a chance to gloss over the fact that this was a long time ago. Well, there you have it, folks. This was a long time ago. Pack it all up, go home. No more investigation needed. Let's just forget about the fact that Maxwell, according to all of these girls, was engaging in widespread abuse, sexual assault, grooming of children, procuring of children, and the actual abuse herself. Let's just forget all of that because it happened a long time ago. Maxwell's lawyers filed another motion, currently under seal, arguing that the sex trafficking charges should be dismissed because they are time barred. Again, more loophole nonsense, more wrangling, more BS. Not that our client is innocent. No. It's that we got this loophole here that we want to exploit. Another motion that remains under seal argues that Maxwell is protected by a controversial non-prosecution agreement that Florida federal prosecutors reached with Epstein in 2007, which protected him and any potential co-conspirators from being charged again for the sex crimes he had been investigated for then. So that is, again, another huge hurdle here, right? It is a very big hurdle that needs to be done away with. And even if the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals does not overthrow it, then I truly hope that the lawyers and the prosecution pursue it all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. Because in my opinion, folks, there is no way in hell that this non-prosecution agreement should be allowed to stand. Federal prosecutors in New York have argued that they are not bound by that agreement, but the sexual trafficking charges Maxwell faces are alleged to have taken place before the time period covered by the non-prosecution agreement, suggesting that they sought to avoid testing its applicability. Yeah, I could see that. I could see why they would not want to try and navigate that road and try and put the prosecution in jeopardy. Now, if that gets thrown out, well, it's game on, folks. And all of those charges, they're all back on the table. Weinstein said the range of motions filed by Maxwell's lawyers shows that they are being thorough, though he didn't rate the chances of success highly. They're perhaps going to raise the eyebrows of the judge, but I don't know that they're going to dismiss the charges, he said. Yeah, I highly doubt they're going to dismiss the charges, okay? It's not going to happen. At this point, Maxwell and her team are trying to sow as many seeds of discontent and confusion as possible. They're doing their due diligence. They're trying to bring all of these technicalities up in hopes that maybe a couple of the charges get dropped. I think that the prosecution should respond by superseding the indictment, unleashing the RICO charges, and also charging all of them with the Mann Act. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, that's episode number 2. I'll be back later on, and we'll pop off episode number 3. Have a great day, everyone.